Bunny, a hardworking girl who pours her passion into baking delicious cakes and pastries, finds success in a small town after a strange entity knocks on her door one day. She quickly bonds with the townsfolk who praise her for her delicious baked goods, creating a place where they can relax in and take their minds off of everyday worries and concerns. This, however, is short-lived when someone uncovers where the ingredients come from in Bunny's secret recipes. Hi folks, I'm R and welcome to this video. I hope that you have already eaten, as the story makes you avoid food for at least some time. Keep in mind that there will be spoilers. With that said, let's indulge. Preparing her bakery for the day, customers rush to the shop impatient for the delicious cakes Bunny makes. The regular customer, Bear, sits patiently next to the other customers, asking Bunny for his favorite red velvet cake. Using her secret recipe and a few peculiar ingredients simply labeled as white and red, she prepares her to kill for finger-licking good red velvet cake. After giving it to Bear, a regular customer, he leaves with Bunny knowing that it's better to prepare something already to take the pressure off work later on. After a few hours of non-stop work, serving several customers, keeping them happy, lunchtime approaches with many rushing into the shop, with Bunny calling it a lunch rush. After a stressful and long baking session, trying to serve customers as fast as possible, lunchtime comes to an end, with Bear yet again being present, thanking Bunny for opening her bakery as it helps him relax and take his mind off of things, spending time there, especially as the neighborhood they live in is particularly dangerous. Bear continues that many have been going missing without any trace, as if they were erased from the plane of existence. Bunny subsequently asks Bear to take care of himself, and they bid each other goodbye until next time. As Bunny closes shop, she goes to fetch some new fresh ingredients when the twisted secret is revealed on how she sources her ingredients and makes her delicious cakes. The secret recipe she was so protective and proud of was in fact using live animals. The animals in the story are seemingly representing humans as they are humanoid, speaking and enjoying spending time in the bakery. But either way, they are live creatures who are being butchered and tormented by a psychotic Bunny, kind and nice on the surface, while cruel and merciless inside. A new animal that has recently been trapped and placed in the pantry wakes up in a cell alongside Panda, who has his limbs missing. Bunny, to keep her ingredients, or in other words, these animals' flesh and body parts fresh, chops them piece by piece, keeping them alive as long as possible in order for their flesh not to rot. Therefore, the white, red, fat, and meat ingredients could all have been derived from these poor innocent animals, ingredients that the customers enjoy, not fully realizing what goes into making them, what torment and pain the sentient victims have to endure. The panda instructs the newly imprisoned animal to find Bunny's notes in order to decipher them and find the code to the door, so maybe he can at least escape as he still has his limbs intact, able to run. Coming across another tortured animal whose missing parts of body, it cries in despair yet shallow and temporary happiness that Bunny is in a good mood today, happy that she had a good day, as it continues that Bunny is a very different type of monster when she has bad days. So maybe, apart from psychotically chopping the animals piece by piece while keeping them alive, she releases all of her stress and anger on these animals when she has a bad day, sadistically tormenting them just to maybe feel a little better herself. Therefore, the reason so many people have been going missing is due to Bunny, who doesn't waste any parts of the kidnapped victims, feeding others with their flesh and body parts, explaining how they disappear without any trace. Despite Bear considering Bunny a friend, all she cares about is to feed them with cut up pieces of kidnapped animals, and also how to source her ingredients. As the newly kidnapped animal tries to run away, if Bunny notices it, she, with one quick slash of her cleaver knife, cuts the head of the protagonist, chopping it into pieces and waiting for her customers to serve it too in the coming days. As next day begins, Bear, the seemingly friend of Bunny, comes to her shop, showing his undying support, who gets fed with Bunny's secret recipe cakes containing the flesh of the suffering victims in her pantry. The story in a way resembles the story of Sweeney Todd, the barber in the 19th century London depiction melodrama, who killed his clients and gave their bodies to Mrs. Lovett, who would serve them to her customers in her delicious meat pies, who managed to turn her business around using human flesh. At the same time, the story could point towards the atrocities happening in animal factory farms, who suffer all sorts of pain and torment just to be served as food, even as snacks, baked goods, pasties, or pies. In this ending, if the protagonist manages to stay out of the sight of the monstrous Bunny, traversing across the sickening and nightmare-fueled pantry with blood trickling on the floor and flesh cut in different shapes hung on meat hooks on the ceiling, he manages to talk to the survivors, or in better words, victims or what remains of them, who explain how horrible Bunny truly is. She is wearing a shell pretending to be nice and friendly, but in fact, she is sadistic and horrible. She treats the victims with cruelty and even punishes them if they try to escape, making them suffer far worse. The victims explain that when she doesn't have a good day, she becomes like a monster, torturing the incapacitated victims who don't have any limbs to defend themselves. Collecting 6 notes written each week from opening the bakery in a span of 5 weeks, the protagonist discovers that Bunny in fact had a declining business, with no one liking her cooking and baked goods. A day comes when a rabbit knocks on her door, severely injured, bleeding profusely. Bunny, nervous and horrified at first, tries to help the rabbit, but it eventually meets its end, dying due to the severe blood loss. Bunny, left in a state of shock, yet nervous she would be incriminated, decides to do a horrendous thing by getting rid of the evidence and chopping the corpse into small pieces and feeding them to unaware customers. The protagonist manages to escape and inform the town folks about the horrifying experience he had down in the pantry, with the remains of the victims still present there. The townsfolk, who are still in denial, too comfortable with their new aspect of life, having a nice bakery, find it hard to believe, but due to the evidence of victims still present down in the pantry, they decide to check it out for themselves. Seemingly believing the protagonist and starting to feel disgusted with themselves, having a sense of doom, they witness the butchered victims lying with half-life, trembling in fear, cold, and defeat, not believing that they are being saved, but even then, what sort of miserable life awaits them? A life of trauma and fear, missing limbs, and a new life they need to adapt to. Having hatred and disgust towards the monstrous Bunny, someone they trusted and bonded with, they don't find her anywhere in the bakery, who took off as soon as the protagonist escaped, knowing full well the town folks wouldn't allow her to live there anymore. Maybe Bunny is off to another town with unknowing people who are doomed to be her ingredients, as after all, she developed a taste and talent for serving cut pieces of corpses or live people after the dying rabbit knocked on her door. Ending 3, known as Waiting, can be achieved if Bunny becomes too busy with customers and serving more flesh, which makes many of the victims in the pantry disappear, as more of their flesh ends up being served to the customers. This leads to the protagonist managing to escape but not obtaining any sort of paranoia or PTSD, as he didn't observe the cruelty her victims had to go through, being left in a traumatizing state of having missing limbs and body parts. This time, instead of just informing the townsfolk that Bunny is a murderer, the protagonist waits for the right moment, watching Bunny closely to collect some sort of evidence to provide to the townsfolk. As he didn't have any evidence, nor did he see any injured victims in the pantry, he couldn't just tell the people about her. As far as the protagonist knows, he was the only victim to be killed in the pantry. So now, he watches her closely, waiting for her to kidnap a victim and do what she does best, butchering them in order to record her acts and expose her for good. But this means that someone unlucky has to suffer a grim fate. This ending can be achieved if the protagonist manages to run out of the bloodied pantry filled with animal remains. As the protagonist runs away, he tries to warn all of the townsfolk about the atrocities he witnessed when trapped in Bunny's pantry. Unlucky for the protagonist, no one in the town believes him and sides with Bunny, as possibly they had grown fond of her and her bakery, especially those delicious pies and cakes they couldn't get enough of. This leads to the protagonist to run away from the town and leave this chapter behind him. However, due to the horrendous experience he had, he developed severe PTSD and paranoia, unable to move on, living with a debilitating fear, concerned that he's being ever watched, that maybe one day, when he least expects it, Bunny comes to finish the job, as just like the other victims of hers, he was supposed to be slowly cut into pieces until he would run out of any useful and bakeable piece. This in a way portrays how the townsfolk grew fond and used to the baked products Bunny was making for them. Maybe they became corrupted, eating so much humanoid animal meat, the same flesh of the people they shared a town with. Maybe deep down they knew something is off, but they chose to close their eyes on it, being too used to the convenience of having a bakery in their town, a place they could relax in, ease their mind of everyday hassle, and generally have affordable protein-dense food, instead of even giving the possibility of a notion of Bunny kidnapping innocent humanoid animals and butchering them in her bakery. This is despite them fully knowing people have been disappearing from the town without any trace, so a lead like this would be a great point to start investigating. The townsfolk, however, simply didn't want to be uncomfortable thinking about this idea and changing an aspect of their everyday life they are grown used to. So maybe the townsfolk were as much of a monster as Bunny, as without them, Bunny wouldn't get the motive or financial means to continue kidnapping and torturing the animals. As she mentioned in her notes, she opened the bakery, but due to not having any customers, she was about to close it down, but after utilizing the meat of a dead humanoid animal, she continued business as it flourished. Therefore, if the townsfolk would give the possibility of Bunny killing the townsfolk and investigating, eventually uncovering this atrocity, they would boycott her bakery, leading to her being left with no other option than to close down. This ending can be achieved if Bunny decides not to serve anyone in the bakery. This, in a way, turns into an interesting turn of events. Bunny is forced to close her shop due to incompetence and lack of customer care, as what a bakery shop is good for if it doesn't sell the only thing it's meant for: baked goods. This ending is called Benges, which might stand for a misspelled bunny who couldn't do one thing she was supposed to, serving her customers with the dead humanoid animals she trapped in her dungeon-like pantry. Oh well, maybe it was for the better anyway. The final secret ending, known as Free, is only achieved if the protagonist manages to find a kitchen knife stashed in the key code dial, which he uses to end Bunny's life. The protagonist takes the limbless panda out of the pantry, informing the townsfolk about the horrendous crime of Bunny, who they become horrified of and what they were served, becoming disgusted with themselves. The protagonist takes the panda to hospital, escorting him and watching over him, knowing full well the trauma he went through, fully understanding it himself. Maybe they're going to be the only two who could truly understand each other, maybe finding a way to move on from their horrifying experience with the psychopathic Bunny, creating a never-dying monster out of her in their minds, which is going to be even stronger than her physical form, someone they have to defeat internally. But maybe with Bunny gone for good, it's going to be slightly easier, as they won't live in debilitating fear that she would come back for them and end their lives. That's it for this really sad video. If you enjoyed the story, you can stay tuned by hitting on the subscribe button and the notification bell. It's been your host Star, and as always, have a fantastic day. Take care.